Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast that drags itself out of bed at the crack of dawn and soaks up everything about the day ahead in British politics so that you can stay in bed and listen to us at 7:30 in the morning.
Hello there. My name is Sam Coates of Sky News, and with me is Jack Blanchard of Politico. Plus
and behind
birds.
you is the bird song. Oh my God! Right, Sam Coates' backdrop hits new heights today. I'm used to seeing you in weird hotel rooms, Sam. We had you in the kitchen the other day with your daughter making breakfast noisily behind you, and now I can see trees, I can see flowers, and I can literally hear the birds.
It's summer, Jack, and so I thought we'd go outside because it's quite nice out here. Anyway, today is the first and last session of Prime Minister's Questions of this Parliament before the summer recess, and there are 101 days to go before the announcement of who will be the next Tory leader.
We should also say this is the penultimate edition of Jack and Sam's Daily before we take a summer break. But the good news is there'll be lots more to come. We'll certainly be back at the start of September, but we are taking August off. So enjoy this one and enjoy tomorrow. And then goodness knows what you'll do with your mornings for a few weeks.
Why would we stop? Well, exactly. Although I have to say, I've just realised I'm kind of outside the neighbour's bedroom window, and so that might be a reason to stop because they might get quite cross. Anyway, I'm going to press on and hope we don't get any complaints. Right, Jack, what are the top three things today?
I'm just imagining living in South East London, looking at my window at 6:43 a.m. on a Wednesday morning and seeing a man in a shirt hunched over a sort of fluffy microphone jabbering about PMQs into his mic. Funny old world, isn't it? Yes, the first PMQs for Keir Starmer at the helm, but he will have 7 fewer Labour MPs behind him after suspending a bunch of them last night over that big vote on the King's speech. We'll be talking about that, of course. Second item, well done Tories, you're second again. James Cleverly has launched his leadership campaign. Nominations for the Tory leadership open today. We're expecting there'll be plenty more runners and riders today and over the next few days. We'll be talking about them. And another new leader, probably we'll be looking at Wales, where we should learn the name, well, we're likely to learn the name of the new Welsh First Minister today as well. So we'll be talking about that. Shall we kick off with PMQs then, Sam?
I actually just think we should press pause for a moment because politics goes at such breakneck speed. Occasionally, you just need to hold on a moment and have a look at something before it disappears off into the ether. Now, we mentioned in the last couple of days that the National Audit Office, the spending watchdog, was releasing all these reports into the state of Britain. And they all came in a big pile yesterday afternoon. And they've all got little write-ups in the papers, but they haven't created the kind of splash, bluntly, that they ought to. I'm just very quickly going to run down some of the things that the NAO say today, because, this can't pass without comment. So the HS2 report by the NAO, they say that there's going to be a new white elephant, the new £460 million Birmingham Curzon Street station that will have a 7-platform station despite needing only 3. When it comes to the NHS, they say that there is £2.4 billion worth of NHS infrastructure at risk that's got to be completed urgently. When it comes to helping disadvantaged children, they say that the gap in GCSE results between richer and poorer children is the biggest ever. They say the Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero will struggle to achieve its ambitious carbon capture targets, and there's a significant risk it could miss its ambitions. 2,300 bridges in England are in substandard condition, homelessness at its highest level since records began, and the UK Space Agency has seen a 73% increase in its budget over 5 years, but did not provide clarity over its aims, outcomes or priorities. It's a jolly great mess out there, Jack, and these things are going to inform our politics for months and years to come, but it really doesn't feel like the ship of state and the machinery of government is in great shape.
Yeah, all hail the FT that did splash this story today, unlike every other paper that's gone with Strictly Come Dancing or something else about America. And all hail Playbook PM last night. And my colleague Emilio wrote loads and loads at the very top of Playbook about these NAO reports. I entirely agree. There's 2 reasons why they matter. One is, as you say, it tells us something very important about the state of the country, i.e. it's not in a good state. But crucially, it helps the framing for Chancellor Rachel Reeves next Monday, when she is going to stand up, at least we think it'll be on Monday, and announce this just how terrible everything is speech in the House of Commons, as she lays the groundwork for a pretty bleak budget in the autumn. And I think these kinds of reports from auditors will help her to make the case that projects and in general infrastructure and in general public services are in a terrible state, and obviously she'll be blaming the Tories for that. You mentioned the machinery of government. Before we get into PMQs, while we're doing this, Sam, should flag story on Politico today, pretty important story and a pretty bleak one, honestly. Simon Case, the most senior civil servant in the land, the Cabinet Secretary, been at the heart of the government for 4 years since 2020, will be standing down, we think, at the end of the year for health reasons. He's only 45 years old. You'll remember he had to take time off work for health reasons at the back end of last year. Politico reporting today that he is suffering from mobility problems, he's suffering from a neurological condition, and he's being advised that he needs to step down permanently from his role in the new year. So that is a big moment. It means Keir Starmer will be looking for a new Cabinet Secretary, the most important civil servant in his operation, to run an operation of goodness knows how many civil servants across the country. It means there will be a new powerful figure at the heart of Whitehall next year. Names like Ollie Robbins have been floated, the former Brexit negotiator, known to be close to Sue Gray, Starmer's chief of staff. And just on a personal level, it's pretty sad news for Simon Case, who says he's only 45 and would not be expecting to have to leave a job like this due to ill health at such an age. But so that'll be a big shift at the heart of government coming down the track.
No, that's a big and significant moment. Right, let's press on with today. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to do his first PMQs at 12 o'clock today, the first since he swapped sides with Rishi Sunak. So same old opponent, different view. And that'll be a moment to see how he conducts himself. But really the pressing news of today is that he's doing so with 7 fewer Labour MPs, because he suspended 7 members of the Socialist campaign group last night after they voted against him and backed an SNP amendment in which they called to scrap the 2-child benefit limit, that policy that was introduced after the 2015 election by the Tories, which has been much hated across the Labour Party. But Keir Starmer felt that he had to campaign in the election on a pledge not to abolish it yet, because he said he didn't have the £2.5 billion to pay for it. How significant is this, Jack?
Well, there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. In one sense, not significant at all that he's lost of his own choosing 7 MPs for 6 months, given he's got so many MPs. 411 Labour MPs were returned at the general election versus 121 Tories. I mean, in terms of a visible power shift, just have a look at the House of Commons at noon today. Whatever minor problems Keir Starmer might be having with his party, he is in charge now. You know, you're just going to see these hordes of Labour MPs behind him, at the side of him. They'll probably have to be some sitting in the upper gallery. They won't all be able to fit in the chamber, I don't expect. But yes, he's taken the decision to crack down, I think, about as ruthlessly as you could have expected him to do on these left-wing MPs who decided to vote against the government yesterday. You know, there was a lot of angst within the left of the party that he's done this. You know, he might well have let them off with a stern warning, said, you know, I understand that people feel strongly about this, blah, blah, blah. He hasn't chosen to do that. He has laid down a marker, essentially, to his party that even though we have an enormous majority, I will not tolerate dissent. And that may prove to be a very positive thing to have done from his point of view. It may quash any future uprisings, but it will also sow the seeds of discontent and unrest and anger, and who knows if that may come back to bite him. I mean, you sort of have to feel that when you've got a majority of this size, there ain't very much you can do that's going to cause you a problem in terms of winning votes in Parliament. But he may not always have a majority of this size. Who knows? You know, these grudges can last a long time, and maybe after another election, Keir Starmer's majority looks very different, and at that point, decisions like this are remembered and may come back to haunt him. But, you know, who knows? It's too early to say, really, but it's certainly a big moment. And someone told me the biggest rebellion on a King's Speech debate since 1945, which gives you a sense of how unusual it is for a party's MPs to come out and vote against their own legislative programme within 3 weeks of winning an election.
That's right. So the number of Labour MPs has dropped from 411 to 404. So that's still plenty. I think there are a couple of things about this. It's interesting that the suspensions came after a couple of days where Keir Starmer himself and Bridget Phillipson just seemed rhetorically to be leaning into the concerns of Labour MPs who want to get rid of the two-child limit. So they sounded sympathetic and then have come back with this hardline position. Why is that? Well, for Keir Starmer and for, more importantly, Rachel Reeves, it's all about the money. £2.5 billion would be needed to undo this. And the point is, Jack, we're going to have this or debates like this all the way through the Parliament. At some point, they are going to scrap the two-child limit. And there will be much cheering. But then the debate will move on to the next thing for which they do not have 2.5 or 3 or 5 billion pounds to fund. There are an awful lot of holes that Labour MPs think need plugging, and you give in on this one, you'll just face the next one. But I think there's one nuance to it. In the list of people that have been suspended, so Richard Bergen, Zara Sultana, Imran Hussain, Asmana Begum, Ian Byrne, and Rebecca Long-Bailey, there's one name that jumps out above all others, and that's John McDonnell. He, of course, was the Shadow Chancellor that Keir Starmer, as Shadow Brexit Secretary, sat next to. And I think he plays a more unique role, and the suspension of him is therefore a little bit more complicated than the rest. I just cast your mind back to Labour Conference. Now, Labour Conference took place against the backdrop of those horrific massacres and hostage-taking in Israel. And one of Keir Starmer's priorities was to ensure that the Labour Party looked united in the face of, in sympathy with Israel's grief. And he pulled off quite a coup. He made sure that the left did not do protests and did not disrupt, for instance, the kind of minute silence and hold kind of pop-up protests about what Israel might do next at that conference. Now, the person who helped him do that, the person who helped him manage the left, was John McDonnell. So back, 9 months ago, John McDonnell was quietly the link man with the whips, helping solve problems with the left. Now he's suspended for at least 6 months. That's quite a journey for somebody that Keir Starmer ended up relying on quite a bit not that long ago.
Yeah, I think from Number 10's point of view, for what it's worth, they think that the review they announced the other day, the language from Bridget Phillipson and Keir Starmer on Monday about sort of signalling we are headed in this direction was meant to be a ladder for these MPs to climb down. It was meant to give them a way of saying, OK, we are being hinted at that this is coming down the track. We don't need to vote against this today. Though these 7 chose to vote against it anyway and are being punished for it. Worth noting, there were 40 Labour MPs who abstained last night. Don't know how many of them were paired, how many of them were supposed to be there, but there may well be a few who chose to abstain. Didn't want to vote against it for fear of reprisals like this, but certainly didn't want to vote with the government either. So possibly the discontent within the party is a little wider than these 7. Let's just talk very briefly, Sam, about the bigger picture at PMQs. We're going to see Keir Starmer for the first time as Prime Minister being interrogated. This is the Chief Prosecutor being grilled. That will be interesting to see. We're going to see Rishi Sunak for the first time as the leader of the opposition at PMQs asking questions. He seems much happier now. He seems to be enjoying himself. I reckon he might have quite a good day today, despite all the noise and cheering from the raucous Labour benches. And we're going to see Ed Davey as the sort of what has been the SNP role for the last few years, getting a couple of questions as the third biggest party. Of course, the Lib Dem bloc now 72 strong and very sizable. And Ed Davey is going to have the chance every week to push his agenda, to throw questions at Keir Starmer as well. With the SNP very much relegated down, 9 MPs, occasionally Stephen Flynn, the leader, is going to get a question. Often he's not. We've seen the Lib Dems performing that role from time to time. If we do get an SNP question today, though, pretty clear they'll be asking Keir Starmer about this two-child benefit cap. There may be a left-wing Labour MP who gets a question as well. So don't be surprised if this one actually comes up today and Keir Starmer has to sort of explain himself to the House on Labour's position on this.
That's right. Right, let's press on because we've got almost no time left to do absolutely everything else. The Tory leadership. We finally have the first, probably of many, maybe 8 different contenders in the form of Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly. He used an article in The Telegraph overnight in order to launch his candidacy. The key point of his pitch, and he's somebody who isn't really part of a faction, he's probably a little bit more favoured by the One Nation group than hardline Brexiteers, but he's managed to keep cross-party appeal. The key thing about his pitch is that he wants to appeal not just to Reform voters, but to Liberal Democrats and Labour as well. This is against a backdrop of people like Suella Braverman saying, going all in on the right and saying, oh, well, if I was an American citizen, I'd vote for Donald Trump. James Cleverly says you have to win from the centre. And I think that debate will be absolutely at the heart of this contest. And ultimately, it's going to be for the Tory membership to decide whether the right-wing candidate or perhaps the more centrist candidate comes out on top. So the question is, can Tory MPs convince Tory party members not to pick the most right-wing candidate or not? That's sort of the great big tussle that's going to go on all the way in the next 101 days until we get the result of the Tory leadership contest.
Yeah, and I think for the first part of the contest, or the majority of the contest, when it's about the MPs whittling down the candidates, realistically it's going to be a race to be the right-wing candidate and a race to be the quote-unquote centrist candidate, and presumably we would expect that the final two will broadly come from those two camps. Whether that centrist candidate is James Cleverly or Tom Tugendhat or somebody else remains to be seen. The nominations for the contest open today, they close on Monday, so we're going to get a flurry of people coming over the top, I expect, today, tomorrow and through the weekend. Under the Tory leadership rules, you only need 10 Tory MPs backing you to get into the race. That's a pretty low bar, isn't it? We could see quite a lot of contenders by the time we're looking at this next week. It could be a bit of a sort of, a grand national of a field at the starters, with all of these perhaps some unlikely candidates who you might not think would ever dream of being the leader of the opposition.
Stop talking about Mel Stride like that.
I never would have mentioned Mel Stride, but yeah, Mel Stride might be one of those people. Anyway, it's going to be highly entertaining for journalists. I've no idea how good it's going to be for the Conservative Party, but I think we'll certainly see more coming over the top today.
There are other ways to do leadership contests, and we're seeing that again, this time in Wales, where by lunchtime we may know the identity of the new First Minister of Wales. You'll remember that a few weeks ago, Vaughan Gething's, was it even last week? Vaughan Gething's, the then First Minister, announced that he was standing down amid a slew of criticism and allegations. Nominations close at 12 o'clock today for the new Welsh First Minister and Labour leader, and there's only one candidate, and it's Baroness Morgan. She is the current Welsh Health Secretary, and at lunchtime it looks as if she could be on course to be the next Welsh First Minister. I know two facts about her, Jack. I forgot your name there. I know two facts about her, Jack. The first is, very unusually, she's a peer. She was given a peerage in 2011, and formally she's known as Baroness Morgan of Ely, and even led, was a sort of front bencher in the Lords for Labour on the EU referendum bill and a couple of Wales bills. So quite an unusual political journey for her. And secondly, one of the big kind of policy debates in Wales has been the 20-mile-an-hour speeding limit introduction, which has actually started to be, I think it's the party in the Welsh Labour Party started to row back from that since its introduction. But I don't think she's going to be spearheading that policy because she received a driving ban for accumulating too many points on her licence after speeding on a 30-mile-an-hour road in Wrexham. She had to plead guilty to the speeding charge and accept the punishment, the ban, from the court. That's not something I'm proud of, and I apologise unreservedly. She has a political record and a record of sorts.
Let me give you a couple more facts about Baroness Morgan. She used to be an MEP in Brussels back in the day. My Politico colleagues will certainly know her from that. She's fought the Welsh leadership contest a couple of times before, but obviously never won before. She would be the first female Welsh First Minister, assuming there are no other contenders who come forward today. But I think crucially, in terms of Welsh politics, if you're into that sort of thing, she is supposed to be a unity candidate. Welsh Labour obviously very divided after the sort of bitter repercussions of the demise of Vaughan Gething. She backed Vaughan Gething for the leadership last time. Her deputy, Hugh Rankin-Davies, you'll remember him, Sam was a Labour MP, supported Jeremy Miles. And so the idea is that she sort of brings the party back together after a rather unfortunate few months. Whether that actually happens remains to be seen. But yeah, the likelihood is she'll be the only contender at lunchtime, and therefore she will be formally elected as the Welsh First Minister in the coming days.
political leaders in Britain falling like skittles over recent months. It's quite incredible just how many we've got through in Scotland, in Wales, in Westminster, and even in Northern Ireland.
Let me just tell you two very quickly interesting things before we stop. Two cabinet ministers who won't be at PMQs today, David Lamy and John Healey, both doing very interesting things today. David Lamy, the Foreign Secretary, is in India, where he's going to meet his counterpart over there, and very interestingly is saying that he wants to make progress on the post-Brexit free trade deal with India that was long promised by Boris Johnson, by Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak put it on the back burner. He says he's there to try and revive it. That's pretty interesting. Did not think Labour would be busily talking about free trade deals in their first couple of weeks in office. And John Healey is in Paris and Berlin, and he is talking about this defence partnership with Europe, which is going to be a very big story over the weeks ahead. We're expecting a press conference from him. He's the Defence Secretary, of course, so keep an eye on that as well. Two indications of Labour's foreign policy on show today, while we're all staring at PMQs and enjoying the jokes and the banter and the cheers and all the rest.
Excellent. And we'll bring you all of that in 24 hours for our last Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily before the summer break. Enjoy.
All right. See you tomorrow, Sam. Thanks very much.
See you then. Bye-bye.